Let's talk about GM. They have been in the news a lot lately, and generally not for good reasons, and it continues. They are recalling 2.4 million vehicles to fix 4 separate safety flaws. This comes right on the heels of just recalling 2.6 million cars earlier this year. And last week they had 5 separate recalls for over 3 million vehicles. So over 1.3 million Buick Enclave, Chevy Traverse, GMC Acadia full-size crossover SUVs from 2009 to 14, and Saturn Outlooks from 2009 to 2010. We've got over 1 million vehicles that were added on April 29th, recall to fix a transmission shift indicator cable that can wear and fail to indicate the correct gear. And then there were Chevy Malibus from 2004 to 2008, Saturn Auras, Pontiacs, G6, I mean a ton of stuff. And then just one, we'll give you one of the defects, was the front safety lap belt cables can wear out due to people moving around while wearing the belts. GM told dealers they can't sell new or used version of the vehicles until they are repaired. So basically, GM at this point in 2014 has 29 recalls just in the US alone this year. This is the bailed out GM, of course. So I think that's sort of the interesting place to start. We sort of all own GM, don't we?
Yeah,
yes.
I own a Lincoln, which is owned by Ford. Which falls under Ford. This is a really disastrous story, not just because of all the different recalls, but the reason why now you're seeing a flood of recalls from General Motors is because they had to pay a hefty fine. Well, not really that hefty if I give you the breakdown.
Them, $35 billion.
Yeah, it was $35 million. Just to give you a sense of how ridiculously little that is, they made $37 billion in the first quarter of this year. So that was like paying a parking fine, as one lawmaker put it. And the issue was over this ignition switch flaw. And apparently they knew of the ignition switch flaw a decade prior to actually acknowledging it, right? And so they didn't do a recall when they found out that this flaw happened. And as a result, there were 13 deaths. The ignition would switch off, which meant that their power steering would go out, their brakes would go out.
Airbags wouldn't work when they crashed.
Their airbags wouldn't work. I mean, that's a complete and utter disaster. And for a company to know that this was going on for 10 years, and they didn't do the recall is absolutely egregious. And then to add insult to injury, their fine is so minimal. Now they're going to face a bunch of civil issues, a bunch of civil cases, and they're going to have to pay out more money as a result of that. But again, they got let off pretty easy considering what they did.
Yeah, they're going to take a $400 million charge against their first quarter earnings for all these recalls, which is double what they had done for the 5 previous recalls. But Jimmy, this is this not to be surprised? Big company, they're going to cover up stuff, and then they're going to pay it off, and at the end of the day, somehow we pay for it. Right?
Yeah, not surprised. I mean, this is corporate culture, Dave. This is, in fact, there was a culture at General Motors at that time to be profitable at all costs. In fact, they were even going to their suppliers and saying, okay, well, that contract we have, we're going to pay you half as much, and you still have to deliver. So they were incredibly, squeezing their suppliers, and also a culture of, if there's a problem here, don't tell us.
Yeah.
That was the culture at GM.
Yeah, so getting to the don't tell us part, what they really didn't want was their employees talking about this stuff. So they sent out a list of over 60 words and phrases that they didn't want their employees emailing about. We've got a couple. We just selected a couple for you. So they didn't want them putting the words safety, problem, defect, chaotic, evil, unsafe at any speed, unbelievable engineering screw-up, potentially disfiguring, widowmaker, Kevorkian-esque. These are just this is literally 10 of the over 60 phrases that they were told not to put in their emails because they didn't want any of these emails leaked. So when you have to put out emails warning your people not to write about certain words, and also these are pretty specific, Kevorkian-esque, that sort of also goes to just sort of the general idea, not that it's a cover-up per se, but just the general corporate atmosphere of we're not going to really just, there's no transparency.
And there's no accountability.
Yeah.
That's the bigger problem. And not only it's not transparent, but there's no accountability. No one is paying a price, but they look at the bottom line like this. Well, what do you think we'll have to pay out in lawsuits? And how much do you think it would cost us to recall it? Well, if the lawsuit number is lower than the number it would be to fix the problem, they'll just won't fix the problem. They'll go, well, we'll let 11 people die because it'll be cheaper for us to pay those 11 people off than it will be to fix this problem. So it's even that nefarious. That's how bad they are.
Does stuff like this, do you guys think it makes the bailout look completely ridiculous? That, you know, maybe people should have, the libertarians would have said, well, let GM disappear.
Yeah.
Instead, we bail them out, we artificially keep them alive, and then we see what the results are.
Except this goes on in every company. This is not just germane to General Motors. It might just be happening a little harder at General Motors because they were under such pressure to be profitable at that time because they were bankrupt and they were getting, so maybe, but you know, Toyota just had the same thing. They weren't recalling, they had accelerators that would stick, right? So you know all about it. So I mean, this isn't just, this is corporations and what she says about so libertarians would say, wait a minute, they're going to make sure that there's no problem with their cars because if there is, they'll go out of business. Well, they're not going to go out of business, you dummy. They're going to keep making more money because they've got the system rigged, they've got lawyers, and the people who get injured don't have the money to hire the lawyers to do that.
Are you guys saying that the government and corporations are too closely aligned? Is that what you're saying here? Because I'm shocked.